All right, so I'm next in the lineup. I'm Tina Grant. I'm the executive counsel here at Lasers. And I am charged with giving you a little bit of an update of what happened during the 2023 legislative session. So lucky for us, it's behind us, but even more lucky for us, we did pretty well. So let's talk about it. The Lasers Board of Trustees took a position on 4 bills this year, for this past session. And each of these bills that you'll see in this chart, our board took a position to support them. So because we're a little competitive here, we like to keep track of, well, how many of the bills that we supported passed. And I'm happy to say that all of these bills that our board took a positive position on passed. So let me break them down for you. The first few, I'm going to lump together and just call them fiscal bills. It was nice. It doesn't happen very often, but there were quite a few legislators who were intent on getting us money. And we always say thank you with our handout. But there's always been that push to pay down the debt that is owed to Lasers. So let me back that up a little bit so that you understand, because I think so many folks don't understand it. They hear a debt of the system, and they assume that that is a debt that the system created. It is not. It is a debt that the state of Louisiana created when when Lasers was born back in 1946. The state took a position not to properly fund the system. So let's say the actuary said, look, state, you need to contribute 8%. I'm just pulling numbers out of the air. And the state said, yeah, well, that sounds great, but I only want to pay 2%. So from 1946 to 1987, the state just paid what they wanted, and it wasn't necessarily the proper amount to fund the system. And so as a result, there's what we call this initial unfunded accrued liability I'm sorry, I'm walking away from the mic, that the state never properly funded. So it's a debt owed to the system. It's not a debt created by the system by any means. And so what these bills did collectively was put money toward that initial unfunded accrued liability. Because the big reason that your agencies, the employing agencies, have such a high employer contribution rate is not the cost of the benefit. What we call the normal cost of the retirement benefit is roughly 3%. All the rest that the agencies pay is due to this debt created by the state owed to Lasers. So these fiscal bills, I'll give it to you in total. We got a total of $376 million. That's a nice chunk of change. And that was to go to that debt, that initial unfunded accrued liability. So why is that impactful? Because the debt's scheduled to be paid off in 2029. But the sooner we can get that paid down, then the less the employers have to pay. So it's a win-win. It's a win for the state, certainly a win for Lasers and our members. It's a win for the employers as well. So all of these fiscal bills made a big impact, and I've got them broken down. You're welcome to look at a little bit more, but in essence, it was roughly $376 million total that Lasers received. So one of the others, I'm on page 4, Lauren. One of the other bills, this is, it's now Act 107, which was House Bill 47, brought forward by Representative Nelson. This proposed a constitutional amendment that, if approved by the voters, would require 25% of all non-recurring state revenues be applied to the unfunded accrued liabilities of all of the 4 state systems. The 4 state systems are teachers' retirement, Lasers, state police, and school employees. Those are the state systems. Under the current law, it's set up that Lasers and teachers get 10% of those non-recurring state revenues. But now the voters are going to decide if they want to increase it to 25%, and it would actually be spread out between the 4 systems. So again, this is one of the bills that our board took a positive position on, took a position to support, and it's actually going to be on the ballot as Amendment number 3 on the election October 14th. So again, that's just, it would give more money to pay down the debt created by the state owed to the systems. All right, so now the biggie, let's talk the COLA reform bill. This is a bill that, well, now an act, but it started as a bill that teachers and lasers and the other 2 state systems worked very, very hard on for years, honestly. To understand what has now happened and what has changed, I need to tell you what the old COLA mechanism was like. Well, first of all, no one understands it. So even the actuary, no one understands it. It was very complicated. So many thresholds that the system had to meet before we could even think about putting money aside for a COLA. And the reason it was designed that way, it was intentional, because at the time, the focus was we need to get the debt paid down. And so the old mechanism was more of an indirect way of funding, and also it was gain sharing. So whatever money the systems made, because we invested so well, we had to share, if you will, with paying down that debt. And because of that, we had less funds available to put aside to pay a COLA. So what we decided to do, and we did lots of research, we looked at systems across the country to see how do you fund COLAs? What's a better way of doing this? And so what we've come up with, and what was now passed and is now law, it's going to be more of a direct way of funding. We're no longer going to be sharing our gains. What's going to happen is, as that employer contribution rate goes down, because we're on a schedule to pay down that IUAL, that debt, right? So as the employer's rate falls, the systems are capturing a little piece of that. And so when we capture it, we're going to set it aside in its own fund. It's a COLA account. And as that money builds, then we will have funds to pay a COLA. Now, the legislature's still going to have to approve it. They like to be in control, and we like to let them be in control so that we can get what we want. So the legislature we have to take it to the legislature to say, hey, guys, we have enough money in our account. We'd like to do this for our retirees and pay them a COLA. And so that's in essence, that's my paraphrasing of what otherwise can be a very complicated mechanism. But we feel good about it. This is like, as I said, a direct way of funding COLAs. So think of it as, rather than using your credit card to pay for something, and then you get ate up with interest and you have to pay it, over time, this is more, no, I'm paying cash. There's no interest. That's the big difference. So it's a savings, it's a win-win for the system, for the state, certainly for our retirees. So as far as the amount of the COLAs and how it's going to be done, the law still is set up that a COLA will be up to 2%, and that's going to be on the first $60,000 of a member's retirement benefit. We are hoping, and it's not going to happen right away, but we are hoping once we can build money into this account that we're going to have more consistent and more regular COLAs, and we're hoping to be able to pay them every 2 to 3 years, which would be a big change, right? Because our retirees, have gone many years without getting something. As I said, it's only going to be granted if there's enough funding in this COLA account, this new account, and the legislature has to approve it. There's no set time as to when the first one will be. We get phone calls constantly about when is it going to happen? Why is it going to be so long? And it's like, come on now, we've done something great. Give us a minute. Let's let it build up. Don't get impatient. But people are. There are certainly lots of safeguards that we made sure to build into the law to protect the employers. So, the idea is the employers are getting this windfall, if you will, of that rate coming down, and we want them to feel the benefit of that. So we're not going to take it all. You know, we're not going to take. We're like, as I said, we're capturing a part of that, but there are limits as to how much we can capture, and how much we can hold in that account to pay. So, and that's similar to the old mechanism. We didn't change that too much. As far as eligibility goes, there is a big change. So old mechanism, a retiree had to be 60 and had to be retired for at least a year. Well, now it's going to be you have to be age 62 and you have to have been retired for 2 years. But think about it, y'all. Our newer plans, people aren't eligible to retire now till they're 62. So it may sound scary and bad, but it's not. Because by the time all of this gets going and our younger workforce gets to be closer to retirement, they're all going to have to be 62 anyway. So that's the big change with regards to eligibility. So I believe that is it for me. So hang in there on the COLA. It's going to happen, and they're going to become more frequent and more consistent. That's the goal. But that's about it. Thank y'all.